mind, what does it mean for us? I'm Ebony K. Williams, an attorney and former public defender, and host of a brand new podcast where we're going to cross-examine news-making cases and famous faces to understand the context.
And I'm Dustin Ross. I'm a TV writer, a cultural observer, and I am thrilled to be co-hosting Holding Court with Ebony K. Williams.
Now, this is not a podcast about the law.
This is a show for the people.
Yeah, to help us navigate a rigged system.
Teachable moments from the so-called Law and Order headlines.
Listen to Holding Court with Ebony K. Williams on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Oh, it is a Tuesday. We are live in Los Angeles. This is the Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we're on Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. Joy Taylor is joining me. 1 hour from now, the Herd Hierarchy, 10 best teams in the NFL. I promise I'll have the Steelers somewhere in the top 10. And the Saints, by the way.
Yeah, you didn't have the Saints in the top 10 last week, huh?
I didn't. I just, all year long, I'm like, can't throw a deep ball in this league now. Forget it. So, that's Joy Taylor, of course. Joy, I'm going to say something. I'm not going to speak for women. I want to speak for men.
Okay.
We're lousy at X's.
At X's?
We have great pickup lines. We don't know how to break up.
Oh, yeah.
We always get into wars. We can't get out of them. And that's the theme, Joy, for today's start. Guys are great entering stuff. They walk into a restaurant bar. We got the pickup line. We can never get out of a relationship. Right? It's always clunky, right? Do I email her? Call her? I mean, we've always done this as guys. We're good getting into business. We come up with ideas. Then it unravels. How do we get out of this thing? Exit strategies is a skill. Some do it better than others. Johnny Carson, great last show. Boom, out. Never saw him again. That's how you do it. Bill Belichick's smart. Tom Brady left New England. Why would he stick around? I mean, you see what's going on in New England. Bill Belichick's won 43% of his games in his career. Bill Belichick without Tom Brady. So when they win last night, they are no longer getting one of the top 3 college quarterbacks. Top 5 picks in the NFL draft, 3 of the 5 teams are taking a quarterback. Jets 1, Jags 2, Washington number 5. Dallas and the Giants, my guess is, stick with their current quarterbacks. Well, Colin, they can get Zach Wilson. They can get Zach Wilson at BYU. No, they can't. Today the Patriots have the 13th pick. Beyond those top 3, Jets, Jags, Washington, Carolina, Atlanta, Detroit, and Minnesota may all draft Zach Wilson. They're not getting the number 4 quarterback. And they're going to beat the Jets again. And they'll probably win another game because of Belichick. What's their quarterback solution? Brady left New England. Why can't Bill? Bill knows you can't win in this. All I heard in the offseason, all Joy and I heard, Belichick, he's brilliant. He'll go 11-5 on genius. You're watching them. They can't move the sticks. They got lucky to win. Lucky to beat the Jets last night. We're outplayed most of the game by the Jets. You can't. Pete Carroll couldn't win. Bill Belichick couldn't win. You can't win without a quarterback. And the quarterbacks are getting better and they're getting younger. And you got to have a quarterback. New England's got Josh McDaniels. The owner Kraft likes him. They already signed him to a massive extension, highest paid coordinator. Just think about this today. They can't solve their quarterback solution. They're not running this Cam thing back. They're not running this thing back. Garoppolo, I get it, but he's never healthy. Matt Ryan, have you watched the NFL? Matt Ryan's not the future. He's expensive, he's past his prime, and he can't move. He's a statue. Look around the league right now. The Jags are going to get the number 2 pick and a star quarterback. Bill Belichick. Old guys like Florida. Parcells went there, so did Coughlin. Jags. Bill, run the whole show. You're the coach. You're the quarterback. Here's Justin Fields. It is built for Belichick. It is built for Belichick. L.A. Chargers. They need a new coach, right? They got the star quarterback. They're in a crowded sports market. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Rams, USC, to hockey, to soccer, to baseball, World Series champs, NBA champs. They got to make a splash. Justin Herbert and Belichick sell tickets to a franchise, the Chargers, that can't sell tickets. But if you look at the Jaguars, they could use a coach and a GM, and they'd give total power to Belichick with Justin Fields. Okay, cap space and a star quarterback. Chargers already have the star quarterback, have a really good GM. They're ready to win now. The Chargers they take a 2-touchdown lead on everybody. I could throw in Houston, too, with Deshaun Watson. The guy running him right now is Belichick's friend. I could throw in the Bengals, although I do think their coach has done a really good job. They do have Burrow, but I don't know. I think Belichick's done Ohio before. I think he's done with Ohio. But you start now in 6 months. Belichick's going to wake up. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the Jets quarterback. Tua is the Dolphins quarterback, and Josh Allen's the Bills quarterback. And you got Jarrett Stidham. It's time to go. That's what Nick Saban's sitting around in Alabama doing. That's what Nick Saban's doing. He's sitting around waiting for the $6 million a year college football analyst job at a network. But he's still good, and he's still got his quarterback. But Saban has told people, I don't want to be Bobby Bowden. I don't want to be one of these guys, Joe Pa. I want to exit at the right time. And Saban's young, but he's like, I want to go move right into television, and I'm going to do it. He's just going to sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait and go, okay, boom, I'm done. Now, this year, Alabama's really good. Looked like the best team in the country, so this isn't the year he's going to step out. But Belichick's got nothing to prove. If he's looking for power and a young quarterback, Jacksonville is made for him. And Belichick has had enough of Nantucket and Boston winters. His beautiful girlfriend, I think they'd love to live on the beach. And by the way, the Chargers, they're desperate to sell tickets. They can't sell tickets in Los Angeles. They have the star quarterback. The Spanos family has been reluctant through the years to pay big money for a coach, but they've had some good coaches. Time to get another one. But this idea Brady left and it surprised us. What's Bill have to sit around for? Robert Kraft has a coach in waiting. The division now, you're going to have Tua, Josh Allen, and Trevor Lawrence because the Jets are moving off Darnold. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. Perfect time to bolt. And this idea, well, Bill's a genius. You can be the world's smartest guy. Pete Carroll was fired twice and 14-18 in Seattle pre-Russell Wilson. And Belichick won 43% of his games before Brady. And he had good quarterbacks. Drew Bledsoe can spin it. So I think exit strategy, there's an art to leaving at the perfect time. Let Josh McDaniel face Trevor Lawrence twice a year, and Tua twice a year, and Josh Allen twice a year. And by the way, Flores looks to be a great coach. Great. And by the way, Sean McDermott in Buffalo, great young coach. You want to cement your legacy? Hand it off to Josh McDaniels. New England's run is officially over. Bill, go grab some golf clubs. Either go to Jacksonville or the Chargers. Get your star quarterback. You deserve it. You did it the hard way in New England. You built it from scratch. You turned Brady into a 6th-round pick to a star. Belichick has earned the right to cherry pick. At the end of his career, Peyton Manning earned the right to pick Denver. Tom Brady earned the right to pick the Buccaneers and their weapons. Bill Belichick has earned the right to go, I don't want to rebuild. The Chargers ready to win now. Or go to Jacksonville. Rebuild again with a star quarterback. But Tom left, why can't Bill? So the story, Tampa got blown out, just terrible. And Bruce Arians, for the second time, took a little bit of a shot at Brady not getting the ball to Mike Evans. Here we go.
With him being the best receiver on this team, why isn't Byron making a more concerted effort of getting Mike involved in the passing game earlier?
Mike was open a bunch in that ball game. He just didn't get targeted. That's all. He was open. Mike was open.
Ooh, that's a little. Let me just say this. It doesn't really matter. Here's the big problem in Tampa this morning. They're a 5th seed. They're a wild card team. Saints beat them twice. Saints are the number 1 seed. They're going to get a bye right now. New England, as of this morning, would have to go on the road 3 times to get to the Super Bowl. They'd have to go to Philadelphia and Carson Wentz and win there. Tampa would go to Philadelphia. Tommy and Tampa would go to Philadelphia, Carson Wentz. Could you win there? And then Tommy and Tampa would go to New Orleans and face Sean Payton in the Superdome and Drew Brees. Got to win there. And then Tommy and Tampa would have to go to Seattle and beat Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson there. That ain't happening. Brady never won back-to-back road playoff games in New England. And that was with Belichick. That was with great defenses. That was with Owa's outstanding top 5 offensive lines. He's got the defense, but he doesn't have the O-line he had in New England or the coach. Just say it out loud. Playoffs, road, Carson Wentz, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson. You're not winning those games. You may win one of them, you're not winning all 3. So, Sunday wasn't just about an ugly loss. Sunday was about officially becoming a wild card team in the NFC. Things may get worse. You may have to go to Green Bay and face Aaron Rodgers. Maybe Philadelphia in their division goes on a win streak. Maybe Green Bay struggles a little bit. I mean, all I know is today it's Wentz, Brees, Russell Wilson. All with really good coaches. One's already beaten Belichick in the Super Bowl. Sean Payton's got a Super Bowl, and so does Pete Carroll. You're not beating those quarterbacks and those coaches back to back on the road. It's not about what Bruce says or Tom says. He couldn't win back-to-back playoff games back-to-back in a weaker AFC. NFC's too thick now. He's 4-4. Tom was 4-4 on the road. Said this for years. Part of the greatness of Tom, let's be honest about it, was the dysfunction of Miami and the Jets and the Bills. He always got a home bye. He went 5-1 or 6-0 in division all those years. Usually 5-1. So, that's Sunday's loss. The finger-pointing stuff, I couldn't care less about. But this is a wild card team now. They're not winning their division. And to go on the road 3 straight times and win, again, 3 Super Bowl winning coaches. 3 Super Bowl winning coaches. Brady's not getting to a Super Bowl in Tampa. That's what Sunday said they're still really good, but so much of sports is your path. I mean, Georgia's a great football pro. If Georgia played in the Pac-12, if Georgia played in the Big 12, they play in the national championship game every year. But Clemson gets to play in the lousy ACC, so their path is easier. Much harder to get out of the SEC and get through Alabama. Your path, New England's path for 20 years was Jets, Dolphins, Bills, 5-1, bye home playoff game. That was a huge component to their success. They're not winning 3 straight roadies against Super Bowl winning coaches. They're not doing that. Tampa's out of the Super Bowl run. They're not winning the Super Bowl with that. Unless the Saints go into the tank, which, if Drew Brees is upright and Sean Payton's still coaching, is not going to happen. Coming up next, Jerry Jones is still talking. He loves his Dak. He's talking on Dallas radio this morning. Plus, next hour, top of it, Colin's Herd Hierarchy.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Hey yo, what's good, y'all? 2020 has been a long year so far, but some good things have happened.
Like Deadass coming back for a 4th season, but this time at a new home with iHeartRadio.
That's right, KK and I are back to give you a little bit of love, laughter, and levity during these hard times.
And for those of you who are new, I'm Kadeen Ellis, TV host, entrepreneur, mom, wife, and the official host of Deadass Podcast.
And I am DeVal Ellis, actor, retired NFL athlete, father, husband, and the voice of reason on Deadass Podcast.
Oh, shut up, DeVal. Ladies, I'm here to represent for us all. While this crazy husband of mine and I discuss the taboo topics people don't like to talk about in marriage, you don't want to miss it.
Join us in conversation with guests like Sean King, Shan Boudram, Melanie Fiona, Joe Biden, and more.
Listen to Deadass on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Deadass.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You still pay for cable to get Lifetime. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're basically a seasoned detective, and you're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, the hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Each week on Solve, you will untangle a case that has pushed detectives to their limits. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence from interrogations, crime scenes, and witness testimony to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Solve returns with new episodes on November 16th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. One crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
On the road a light in the holidays, don't want that car to break down. Is your warranty run out? Go to carshield.com, put in the code HERD. A deductible may apply. Get 10% off. You put the code in, though. A lot of driving here. A lot of driving. Not as much air travel as we've had as the cases surge for COVID. So get in your car, drive to your family, go to carshield.com. So Jerry Jones always does like a Tuesday morning press conference. If I was a coach of a team or GM, I wouldn't love my owner holding a press conference. He does. It's Dallas. It's 103.5 The Fan, and the media in Dallas. You know, everybody's got eyes. We're looking at Kyler and Tua and Lamar, and we're looking at this great quarterback play, and Cowboys can't score, and Dak's off an injury, so the inevitable questions come up to Jerry Jones every week.
Is it crazy to bring up the idea of taking a quarterback with the third pick, or the second pick if you may have it?
Yes. You asked me if it's crazy to bring the idea up, and I'm answering you yes. We're playing games here, guys, but it's not the thing to be talking about at all. You know, Dak is our quarterback.
But, I mean, it's a question, and the reason people are asking it is Dak isn't Lamar or Kyler Murray, or he doesn't look like even Herbert right now, or Joe Burrow, and he's got one playoff win, and 3 of the 4 years he had the best running back and the best offensive line easily in the NFL. Remember, it is hard if you're great. Russell Wilson's great. He's the best football player in the world. He's the best football player in the world. Mahomes is the best quarterback talent. But Russell's the best football player in the world. Since getting to a Super Bowl against New England, he's never won back-to-back playoff games. It's hard. Like, it's hard. Go look at Big Ben, Tomlin. They're going to end up in the Hall of Fame. They always have good defenses. They draft well. They develop well. Where are their back-to-back playoff wins in the last decade? That's with Hall of Fame first-ballot coaches and quarterbacks. Is Mike McCarthy? I mean, I don't know. You're watching what I'm watching. I think the Dallas Cowboys have become the Lakers. They're all up in their feelings. It's a big brand. It's a family business. They've got lots of trophies in the case when they walk by them every morning down the hallway as they go to their offices. And those things, you know, they reverberate. It's in your conscience. You're sitting we're the Cowboys and this and that. And then the Lakers had Magic Johnson running the team, and all of a sudden they said, okay, we got to make a seismic move. Fire Magic, go get LeBron, and now they have championships again. Dallas has to make a seismic move. That's why I don't buy Dak as the long-term future. Dallas suddenly is soft. They're all in their feels. The 49ers get to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. They lead in the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo in the fourth quarter. The minute the Super Bowl is over, multiple sources say they were on the phone looking for potentially another quarterback. Like that's the way the game works. I mean, Belichick loved Tom Brady less after Super Bowl wins than Jerry loves Dak now. If the Cowboys were an emoji, they should just make this their new helmet. If the Cowboys were an emoji, they'd be the heart eyes. Because they're all in their feels. Russell Wilson struggles to win back-to-back playoff games. Big Ben can't. And that's with Pete Carroll and Mike Tomlin. Those are top 6-7 coaches in the league. It's nothing against Dak. There's a place for Dak in the league. I mean, he puts up stats, but, you know, if you take out the Giants and the Washington football team, the Giants are actually not bad this year. If you take those two teams out, Dallas last 2 years has 5 wins. But I think they have to make a seismic move with the organization. I just don't think they're comfortable with it. That's okay. But I watch this. When you get these big brands and a lot of trophies in the trophy case, and it's a family business, and you know, it's hard to say, Magic, you're fired. It's hard to say, Dak, we love you, but. It's hard to do that stuff. I'm not saying it's not hard. But God, Belichick showed less loyalty to Brady, and the Niners were on the phone an hour after the Super Bowl with Garoppolo. Sometimes you got to be cold in this league. The NFL it's not for long, right? You got to be cold sometimes. And I think Dallas is the heart emoji now. Hearts in the eyes. That's what they are. They're all in their feels. Good luck. But if you want Super Bowls, that's a rough way to go. I've seen that thing play out poorly multiple times. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Well, let's stick with the Lover Boys. They're off to a slow 2-7 start this season, the Cowboys. And Stephen Jones was also asked whether the new head coach Mike McCarthy would be safe regardless of how the 2020 season ends.
You got to take a deep breath on these things, and certainly, keep your confidence in the decisions that you've made. And Mike started, similarly, very similar in Green Bay in terms of his first year there, and they finished strong. And certainly, that's our goal here is to finish strong and compete in the East, and we'll go from there.
You could certainly make the argument that his first year with Aaron Rodgers, they were, I think, 6-10.
They were 4-8, and then they won their final 4 games, and then they were in the NFC Championship game the next year at 13-3.
Good argument.
Garrett Gilbert is not Aaron Rodgers.
No.
I think that's not probably revolutionary news to anyone.
But it's a good sales pitch if you're Mike McCarthy, is just go back to my first year. It wasn't all great.
No, I do. Look, I don't know that things have gone the way that I expected them to go this year. Obviously, you don't have Dak Prescott, so it's really, when you lose your franchise quarterback, it's kind of impossible to evaluate what a team is.
Yeah.
That said, they were struggling when Dak was there playing, and it doesn't seem like they've had it together at any point this season. But I don't think that you can bail on Mike McCarthy after 1 year. I don't know that there was ever a chance that would happen unless something really, really dramatic happened. And once Dak went down, it kind of went out the window. You've got to give him another year at least. I don't believe in cycling through coaches. It's a lot to do.
But you also sometimes make a bad decision. Like, I'm with you. Like, I believe the Steelers are the role model of how to do it. Noel, Cowher, Tomlin.
But they also made great decisions.
Yes, they're really a total exception in the NFL.
They're an outlier.
A total outlier.
Along with the Patriots, obviously.
Yeah.
But even still, more of an outlier than the Patriots. So I think you have to give him a little bit more time.
All right.
He has won a Super Bowl.
Okay.
He was a part of Aaron Rodgers' development.
Fair.
So I do think he deserves another year based on
All
that.
right.
And keep in mind, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying how I am evaluating the situation with the Cowboys. And I don't think that the Cowboys are going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon, just to be clear. They are one of the teams that has a new coach in a COVID-short season.
That's fair. These are all reasonable. I know my eyes are telling me they're poorly coached, but you know what? These are reasonable things to say.
I think it's been a complete disaster in Dallas this year. Completely. But you did lose Dak. It's a COVID-shortened season with a new coach.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Environment, new culture.
So I got a bunch of kids, and they're all doing Zoom classes.
Right.
So it would be a year that they could say, Dad, I'm getting C's and D's. It's COVID. I'm not going to the class.
I can't focus.
I totally get those excuses. But what Dad is saying is, well, you have less time to screw off, and so you can get A's. It's just going to be a little harder. And so what I'm saying is, I'm not saying the COVID isn't a good excuse, but I'm watching the New York Giants, and they're getting better every week.
But what if your kid habitually gets B's?
Then he should get...
And then you're expecting him to get A's in a COVID year, and he's getting C's. Because we are honest about the Cowboys, we can be honest about the Cowboys because we don't own the team, and at least you and I aren't Cowboys fans. Obviously, Goulet is.
I had this discussion with my wife last night. I said, listen, you can use COVID as an excuse. But I said, society gives us these things about twice a decade, these big hiccups.
Right.
Now it's a pandemic. We never had one of those. The stock market crashes. We go to war, our budgets, we go into a recession. The country about 2-3 times a decade gives us one of these moments. And my takeaway is, as my dad used to say, recessions are the garage sales for the well-prepared. You got, just because life doesn't groove it to you to win doesn't mean you can say, we can't win now. I'm watching the New York Giants get better, and I'm watching the Cincinnati Bengals with a rookie quarterback get better every week.
I'm not saying COVID is the main reason. I'm just saying there are, kind of layers of reasons.
Right.
And one of these teams was going to really struggle with a new coach, and it just happens to be the Cowboys. And there are several reasons for that. That said, they're still in the mix. The Eagles are 3-4-1. Washington is 2-6, and the Cowboys are 2-7. The Giants are 2-7. So whatever the NFC East is, winning it's not going to accomplish anything for them this year. They have a bye this week, then they're at the Vikings, Washington, and at the Ravens. Vikings have been playing better as of late, so it might be a bad 3-game stretch for them after they get back from the bye. So the Carolina Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey could be sidelined again after suffering a right shoulder injury late in Sunday's 33-31 loss to the Chiefs. Head coach Matt Rule said he is listed as day-to-day. The injury came with a minute 10 left in the game. Sorensen slammed him.
Anytime you fall on your shoulder.
Yeah, you could tell there was something wrong. Yeah, he was doing that.
Yeah.
They showed him doing that on the sideline.
Darnold did that 2 weeks ago. Like, you get banged on your shoulder. I mean, my son was playing flag football, tripped and broke a collarbone. Like, collarbone, shoulders. You could never meet an NFL player who played a decade in the league with good shoulders.
Yeah, my brother broke his collarbone.
Offensive line, yeah, no, it's like collarbones break easily.
Yeah, well, I don't know that he's saying it's shoulder, not collarbone yet, but he came back for one more play and then he wasn't able to come back in. He didn't miss a game in his first 3 seasons, including last season, when he became the 3rd player to have 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same season. But even in this game, I mean, he was 18 rushes for 69 yards, a touchdown, 82 passing yards, and a passing touchdown. So he's huge for them. So hopefully he's able to come back for their next stretch. So Trevor Lawrence has been the presumed #1 pick for a while now, and he was asked about his future on Monday, and he clarified he's leaving his options open.
My mindset is the same, and I really don't want to talk about it anymore, honestly. I'm just trying to enjoy my last few months here, if that's what it's going to be. I'm just trying to enjoy it, and obviously I'm not trying to make a stir. I don't want any more people talking about me than they already are, so my thing is I'm just never going to corner myself to where I have to do something just because of something I said in the past.
I almost always side with the college athlete in these spots. However, to whom much is given, much is required, Trevor. And you are going to be the #1 overall pick in the draft whenever it is that you choose to enter the draft. And the talking about you is only going to increase once that happens. You have now passed over into a space of transcendence. All the eyes are going to be on you for the rest of your career. That's how this works when you're great. So I can't imagine how annoying it is to be asked the same question every time you speak to the media, but that's just what's going to happen because everyone wants to know. And he's saying the right thing. He should leave all of his options open. I think there's a 1% chance he goes back to Clemson next year. I do not think that he should do that. The injury risk is tremendous once you get into that space. So I do think he's going to enter the NFL. He's right to say this because he wants to keep all his leverage, and he should. But people are focusing on everything that he does. There's a reason for that. He's the best player in college football, and that's what's going to happen. So I think he's right to say this. I don't think he's going to go back to Clemson, though.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
3 Super Bowls and a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's also one of our broadcasters. Fox Sports NFL analyst Mark Schlereth joining me, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. Speaking of quarterbacks, you had the Raiders-Chargers, so I want to talk about that because I watched a lot of that game. So your takeaway, we've been saying this on our show for 2 or 3 weeks. Do you buy the Raiders? What do you make of the Raiders? Are they good? They beat Kansas City, or they were outplayed by the Chargers? What do you make of the Raiders?
I think the Raiders are a good football team. I think there's a couple of things that I think about when I think about the Raiders. If they can adhere to what they are, and what they are is a bully. Like, if they can play that style of football, control the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball, absolutely beat you up, running the football, opening up their play action stuff, they're a really tough team to beat. That takes the pressure off their defense. It's real complementary football style when they control the line of scrimmage. If they can't play that way, they are very susceptible. I don't think talent-wise they're talented enough on the defensive side to consistently rush the opponent's quarterback unless that opponent starts counting possessions. We've only got, in a normal game we have 12 possessions. We're only going to have 8 or 9 because of the way they're running the ball and controlling the line of scrimmage. So we've got to put our quarterback in more of harm's way. that's how they're built. If they play that style of football, they're a really good football team. They're a really tough football team to beat.
By the way, it was amazing to watch Tua and Kyler. You got to see Justin Herbert live. Listen, he's big with a good arm. But what did you see with a Chargers quarterback beyond just he's big with a good arm?
Yeah, I think that's coming out of college. Everybody talked about athleticism, a big kid. I absolutely hose. I mean, this kid can throw the ball. But I think what surprised me, or even what surprised a lot of the Chargers players and coaches, is his ability to be accurate and throw a layered football. His touch is exceptional. And I mean, I'm talking about touch and throwing over a linebacker in front of a safety, beautifully thrown, beautifully layered passes. His knowledge of the game, he's really done a good job of understanding pre-snap what teams are giving him, what they're in, and being able to dissect that and go out and cut up a defense. So I think he's exceeding everybody's expectations. And like I said, the touch, the layered nature of the throws, that's been probably one of the most impressive things that I have seen on tape. And I think the thing that has impressed his coaches with him is that ability.
So I watched the Raiders-Chargers game next to the Arizona-Miami game, and I got to tell you, Miami, it's too bad you had to broadcast the other game because it was hard to keep your eyes off Tua against Kyler. You watched it. I mean, what'd you make of Tua? What were your impressions?
My impressions of Tua were I was pleasantly surprised at the progress he made from week 1 to week 2, how much more comfortable he was. He obviously understands the game. He sees the game well. He knows where he wants to go with the football. He's very accurate with the football. I keep thinking about how these young quarterbacks are coming into our league and just really tearing things up, really understanding the game. And obviously the game has morphed into somewhat of a more collegiate style of football with all the shotgun and some of the spread stuff. But to watch Kyler Murray, to watch Tua orchestrate in the pocket, to do the things they do, and then have the ability to escape, to move around, to create, second window throws, to put the defense on its heels. It's just remarkable. Our league is in a really good spot with all the young quarterbacks playing exceptionally well right now.
It's really funny. I was just thinking about that, Mark, as you said that. The NBA, because of the one and done, which most of the good players do one and done, so basketball players globally come into the NBA and they've never been less ready to make a huge impact. College quarterbacks now, because they're doing all these 7-on-7 camps, have never come into the NFL more ready to make an impact. So, I mean, this draft's a great example in the NBA. We'll probably have 2 guys that have an impact in the first year. It's just the reality of it. You go to college 1 year, you go to the NBA, you're 18 years old, you can't even drink at the hotel bar. So I'm with you. I look around the league right now, and I'm blown away by quarterbacks, and I want to segue into this. I watched Cam last night. He's pretty solid last night. But I think to myself, he's not quite as dynamic as these Lamars and, the Tuas and stuff and all that. And, he's never been the efficient kind of, Derek Carr, quarterback, Russell Wilson efficiency. What's the market for Cam Newton right now? What is it?
I think it's a great question because obviously when he won that MVP, he was so athletically gifted and he was such a threat as an athlete that it opened up all those the play action stuff, the one-on-one stuff. There were probably 10 or 12 designed QB runs, and he was so physically gifted. When things broke down, he just made plays and deserved that MVP that he won. He's had about an 8-game stretch there in 2018 under Norv Turner where he was really efficient with the football, throwing the football. I think from a market standpoint, that Cam has entered a place where he's going to be given opportunities or he's earned opportunities, but he's going to have to go in and compete and try to win jobs. It's not just going to be one of those things where we're going to sign you to a long-term deal and you're our quarterback. We'll sign you to a 3-year deal, but you're a backup. We're getting backup money, and you're going to be given the right to either mentor a young quarterback coming in or compete with a young guy that we don't necessarily believe in. But I think that's kind of where he is right now, which, let's face it, there's a lot of guys that have lived a long time in the National Football League playing that role and have gotten plenty of times where they got to start and got to play a lot. So I just don't think he's one of those guys you're going to sign to a long-term deal and say, man, you're our quarterback for the next 3 years. Let's go win some ball games. I don't think that's where he is in his career anymore.
Okay, so I got a lot of heat. It's unfortunate, but America picks on me. But whatever, I can handle it. So I said last week I didn't like Baker out of college. I didn't like Johnny Manziel out of college. I wasn't a big fan of the showboat and Cam. I wasn't a big fan of the silliness of Jameis. And I'm watching Drew Lock dance around, and I'm like, dude, can you win? Get some W's. Like I'm over that. And they asked him about it. He was a good sport. But I'm like the last 2 weeks. I'm just like, he's been terrible in the first 3 quarters, and then mop-up time, he gets yards. But is there any, I just see this, and I know I don't want to be old guy yelling at clouds, but I do see this, and I'm like, just, can you win? Can you be good? Justin Herbert, I'd even let a little of that out, because you may not win, but you're really exceptional. How does that play in Denver?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of new school, like, oh, let the kid dance. He won a game. I tend to be with you, kind of time and a place. Go earn that, and go play well. You have to understand that for 7 quarters, in Kansas City and then in against the Chargers, for 7 quarters you were absolutely horrible. And then you put 1 quarter together where, hey, let's face it. You look at the Chargers, they gave up 2 touchdowns in 3 plays.
Yeah.
2 touchdowns in 3 plays. On a blitz against the run, they had a gap assignment failure, and Philip Lindsay takes it 60 yards or whatever for a touchdown. And then they had a blown coverage, and Deshaun Hamilton scores a touchdown. Like, that wasn't you guys being exceptional. That was the Chargers being awful, being the Chargers. And so there's kind of a time and a place aspect to that, kind of more old school time and place aspect. You got to be good. And, when you watch Drew on film, and even last week, mopping up and putting up yards and scores in the 4th quarter when defenses are just playing back going, guess what? We'll give you yardage. We want you to complete the ball because we want the clock to run. That's not you all of a sudden figuring it out in the 4th quarter. People here in Denver are like, well, why don't they just do what they do in the 4th quarter through the whole game? Because the teams aren't just going to give it to you in the 4th quarter. When they're up by, 21 points, yeah, they're going to let you complete some balls. So, yeah, I think the jury is out right now. And, I wrote down in my notes when I came home from doing the Raiders game, the Raiders-Chargers game, I wrote my notes because I sat down here in the kitchen and watched the game from about 11 to 1 o'clock in the morning, taking notes and charting it, and I wrote down the 6th sense. And the meaning of was I see dead people. Like, how many perceived pressures are you going to feel, and how many times are you going to just take off after your first read is not open? To compete in this league and to compete consistently in this league, and it's kind of what we were talking about Cam. You have got to, at some point, be able to eviscerate defenses from the pocket. And if you can't, guess what? You're not going to consistently win, at least not in the playoffs. And think about it from, like Lamar Jackson. What do we say? Phenomenal. Won the MVP. Unbelievable. If you can get him down by 10 and make him compete from the pocket, guess what? Your odds of winning have become dramatically better. And so I still will be old school in that if you can't win from the pocket, you can't win. Not the big games.
Yeah, Mark Schlereth, good seeing you, buddy. 3 rings, 2 Pro Bowls. Thanks, buddy.
You got it, bud.
It is funny. Like on Twitter, everybody likes new school, old school's bad. And listen, I like new music. I'm not into old music. I'm not into classic rock and roll. I heard it when it wasn't classic. It was fine. I tend to be a little more progressive on certain things, but I do think old school matters. Like I think time and a place matters. With Drew Lock, it's like there's a time and a place to do that. Dude, you're awful for 3 quarters. And they go into a prevent, and against Atlanta, you're awful for 3 quarters, then they go into a prevent. Like, I want to see stuff before dancing. There's a time and a place for everything. Time and a place, and if I'm old school on that, all right, old school's not always wrong. Not always right, not always wrong. Coming up next, the Cleveland Browns have a problem. It's not Baker. It's the Miami Dolphins. I'll explain coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
On September 17th, 2009, 24-year-old Mitrice Richardson disappeared without a trace in the woods near Malibu, California. She had been arrested at a beachside restaurant for failing to pay a tab and taken to the Lost Hills Sheriff Station.
I mean, she's not from that area, and I would hate to wake up to a morning report. Almost lost somewhere with her head chopped off.
The police released her just after midnight, with no car, no cell phone, no money.
She doesn't know the area. She's never been in your area. Well, I think she's suppressed. That's what has me mortified.
That's worried you more than just her. Okay.
Mitrice disappeared into the darkness and was never seen alive again. I'm Catherine Townsend, host of the podcast Hell and Gone. We're going to try to find out what really happened to Mitrice Richardson. School of Humans and iHeartRadio present Hell and Gone Season 3. Listen to Hell and Gone on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I knew they were going to kill him.
Police and FBI.
This is Fight Night, a new podcast from iHeartRadio. This is the story about two guys from opposite sides of the street. A hustler blamed for robbing the most dangerous gangsters in the country.
This is like issuing a death warrant for me for something that I don't even know anything about.
And the cop who tried to save his life.
They thought he had robbed the deadliest man in this country. Guys who would not hesitate to blow your head off.
In 1970, Muhammad Ali triumphantly returned to the ring. At the hustlers' party that followed, gangsters from around the country were robbed of $1 million. This story from Atlanta, Georgia, has been reported for 50 years. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear what really happened from the people who lived it. Listen and follow Fight Night on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Michelin Endurance XT silicone wiper blades. Get them at Walmart. Last 2 times longer than other blades for crappy winter weather. It's great to have you in. Top of the hour. Herd hierarchy. So, I made my NFL predictions, and I thought this was going to be mostly a rebuilding year for Miami, but I love the way they finished last year. 5-4 in their last 9. Better than New England, but I thought they'd still be kind of 7-9. When you got a good coach like Brian Flores, they're good. The problem with them being good, it's bad for Cleveland. So if you look at the AFC playoff picture to now, and remember, the Raiders have already beaten Cleveland. So if that's a tie, the Raiders go in. So not only are the Raiders ahead of the Cleveland Browns, but the Dolphins are now in a tiebreaker ahead of the Cleveland Browns. And here's the problem. Here's Cleveland's remaining schedule, and they've got what I would call a wildly inconsistent defense. Love Myles Garrett, you could have the rest of it. They face these quarterbacks with a so-so defense. Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Big Ben, Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill. These are really good quarterbacks. Miami faces, with this defense, which is a great defense, a bunch of baby quarterbacks. If you go and look at who the Dolphins face in the next month, rookie Justin Herbert, seemingly rookie Drew Lock, Sam Darnold, Joe Burrow. By the way, then they get the Patriots 2 weeks after that, and Josh Allen 2 weeks after that. So if you said this morning I have to take the Dolphins or the Browns in the playoffs, better coach, looks like Miami. We'll wait on Tua, but he looks really efficient. They just beat Kyler Murray on the road. So all I see with Cleveland is a not trustable defense outside of Myles Garrett and a lot of big-name quarterbacks. With Miami, I see a lot of rookie quarterbacks or quarterbacks with less than 15 NFL starts with that defense and that coaching staff. Miami is better than we thought. And I've said this before about a business. I could take over Netflix today. And for the next 6 weeks, I wouldn't ruin it. In fact, I wouldn't ruin Netflix for the next 6 months. But the longer I was at Netflix and the more decisions I was asked to make that were crucial, in 2 years I'd ruin it because I'm not a CEO, right? I could take over Microsoft or Apple. You wouldn't know anything for 6 days. You probably wouldn't know anything for 6 weeks. But 6 months in, that's a weird product we passed on. The longer Miami goes with Flores, they're just getting better and better and better, and Tua's just going to get better and better and better, and the way they're developing their rookies in Miami are getting better and better and better. Like, when I watch Miami, I feel like they're a better team every week. I don't feel that with Cleveland. I kind of feel like this is what they are, hot and cold depending on who they play. So, the Raiders already beat Cleveland. I look at Miami this morning. Go back to the AFC playoff picture. It's good news for Miami. Next month, Miami faces baby quarterbacks with Brian Flores and that defense. And right now, I like Miami's next month way more than I like Cleveland's. Cleveland in the next month has to face Wentz, Deshaun Watson, and he has to go to Tennessee and follows that up with the Ravens. I like Miami to that. Yeah, maybe it changes in a week or two, but today, Miami, Cleveland, if I had to pick, I'd take the Dolphins. Herd hierarchy coming up next on a Tuesday, live in Los Angeles. It's the Herd.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. This season, we'll have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes. Guests include the amazing singer and actor Anthony Ramos, TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio, NBA star Aaron Gordon, and many more. Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Gangster Chronicles is a weekly podcast hosted by former gangbanger and inmate James McDonald, rapper MC8, and myself, Norm Steele. Weekly we get together and have conversations with everyone from former gangsters, drug dealers, and bank robbers, to police rappers and politicians. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is a glimpse into a world where society is rarely allowed access. Nothing is ever scripted and is 100% real. We don't glorify the gang, we simply educate and inform the world on what goes on in the streets of urban America. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Fight Night, a new podcast from iHeartRadio.
They thought he'd robbed the deadliest man in this country. Guys who would not hesitate to blow your head off.
This story from Atlanta, Georgia, has been reported for 50 years. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear what really happened from the people who lived it. Listen and follow Fight Night on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
News with a new perspective.
News with a black perspective.
The Black Information Network is the first all-news audio and digital network
for and by the black community.
Get the podcast and get the biggest news and business stories delivered to you every morning.
Subscribe to the Black Information Network daily and wake up with the latest from the Black Information Network.
Loaded and ready to go when you are.
Listen to the Black Information Network daily on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts,
or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go on a Tuesday, hour 2, live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. So great, right? It's freezing in our studio this morning. So Skip Bayless likes, he likes like 12 degrees in here. So we walk in every morning and it's like Siberia. It's Anchorage. And then Joy and I, from warm weather places, like, I spent a lot of years in Vegas, you in Miami, we like it warm.
Yeah, so I'm wearing a sweater today, but I also, unlike you, have a heated blanket.
I don't.
Every day. So, it's cold in LA today, though.
It was cold last night.
Yeah.
I went out to
and
dinner.
like cold, not like we're complaining cold.
Like,
it was legit cold. It's like 40 degrees.
Yeah. It's a shame. It had to be one day of the year. It wasn't perfect for us. So, by the way, when I do the Herd hierarchy, as Goulet knows, I used to work at another place, thankfully don't, and they would do a top 10 list every week. And it was just basically all the undefeated teams were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm like, those aren't the best teams. There's no context to it. Sometimes you get scheduling. So a lot of times teams will win. I'll move them down. Who'd you beat? How'd you beat them? Teams will lose, and I don't move them down. It's like, they lost a overtime game. So mine's not based on anything other than, like, when I watch them play, I kind of go, would this team beat that team, beat that team, beat that team? So with that, I present the Herd hierarchy.
Herd hierarchy.
Let's go.
The top 10 NFL teams according to Colin. Number 10.
I moved the Raiders down after a win. If it wasn't for a bobble, they lose to the Chargers. Listen, they've won 3 of their last 4 games on the road. There's something to them. They beat Kansas City 13 straight games with 300-plus yards. Derek Carr, top 5 completion percentage. I like them. I think there's a way for them to win. I don't think they're good enough defensively, and I think as we get into Thanksgiving and beyond, defense becomes a much bigger deal. They're a good football team. I think there's a ceiling with them. I've seen them get rolled by Buffalo and Tampa at home, but I like them. I don't love them, but I like them. I thought if not for a bobble, they lose this past weekend. And, it's like Mark Schlereth said, when they do a little bully ball on offense, control it, they can win. But I see some cracks here, and I thought they were a little bit lucky this weekend.
Number 9.
I think the Dolphins would beat the Raiders today, this morning, if they played. I think their head coach is great. They've got 2 defensive touchdowns the last 2 weeks. That leads the NFL. I think they have a better defense than the Raiders. I think similarly they'll be very efficient at quarterback. I think they play as hard as anybody in the league. I mean, from special teams to defense, they got a lot of different ways they can score and beat you. I just like what Miami's doing. And I think if they played the Raiders over the next month, I think they'd give them fits. To go to Arizona and win that game in Tua's second start blew me away. Miami 9.
Number 8.
But I think they would lose to Tampa Bay. Let's not go crazy on Tampa Bay. Tampa would beat Miami because of their experience at quarterback. Tampa's got a reality now. They're really inconsistent, and they're a wild card team. And they're 0-2 against the Saints. That's their reality. Now, their defense has forced the most turnovers in the NFL and is tied for the most interceptions. But even their defense has been inconsistent. On their good days, they can beat anybody, and on their bad days, they're embarrassing. That's why I put them at number 8.
Number 7.
But I think the Seahawks would beat Tampa because despite what I saw in Buffalo, Seattle had won their last 10 East Coast road trips. Here's Seattle's issue. They're bad against mobile quarterbacks, and Brady's not mobile. I think they'd beat Tampa. First team in NFL history to score and allow 23 points in 9 consecutive games. So their games are all shootouts. The Seahawks don't play a normal game, ever. All their games are whack. All of them. They're all crazy. Their defense has allowed 3 different quarterbacks to throw for 400-plus yards this year. It's all the mobile guys. But I do think with Carlos Dunlap on the defensive line and Jamal Adams, they will get better defensively. I think this game this week was weird. They had 2 big divisional rivals, the Niners and the Rams this week, and it was a sandwich game out east, and they played awful. But I think if they played Tampa, that has a pocket quarterback, they would win.
Number 6.
But I think Buffalo would beat Seattle. How do I know? Because I just watched them. Buffalo's 2 teams. When John Brown is playing and healthy at wide receiver, they are a handful. When he's not, they're not as dangerous offensively. Josh Allen's playing well. They're on a 3-game winning streak. Let's be fair. They've only lost 2 games, Chiefs and Titans. They're good. I like their coach. The quarterback is good when he's got his full arsenal of people. That includes John Brown. Their defense isn't great, but again, I think good coaches elevate what you are. So if you're average defensively, can you be at least situationally okay on defense? I think Buffalo can.
Number 5.
I could put the Saints number 1 after this weekend, so I don't want to overreact, but they are on a 5-game winning streak. I thought their defense finally showed up. They have Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Thomas back. And this is a big Vegas thing. Second best yardage differential in the NFL. So they've outgained their opponents by almost 650 yards. Vegas loves that. Basically, when you go into games, you win the yardage. If you do that over the course of a season, you win 10, 12 games. And you get, right now, they're a number 1 seed. So I don't want to overreact to it, but I love what I saw from their defense. I thought it was like, okay, and let's be honest about it. They've been all beat up at wide receiver for a month, so now they're healthy. It's a different-looking team.
Number 4.
But listen, here's my thing with Green Bay. I know what they are on their good days. I know what they are on their bad days. But they usually have good days. So I think they're going to win 13 games. I think they're going to be the number 1 or 2 seed. I think Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams right now are the most lethal quarterback-wide receiver combo in the league. I love Aaron Jones. There's so much I like about this team. I just don't think they're good in a phone booth. But I think a couple of the teams they don't match up well with are like Baltimore, Tennessee, Pittsburgh. Oh, they're in the AFC. So I think a lot of the teams in the NFC, they do match up. I think they match up with the Saints fine. I think they match up with Seattle fine. So the teams I don't love how they match up with, the Niners are all beat up, and the other ones are in the AFC.
Number 3.
Ravens. It's funny, everybody's telling the Ravens stuff. I want to read you 2 things. 31 straight games they've scored over 20 points. It's the longest streak in the league. And you're all telling me how bad their offense is. And 21 consecutive games they've had a takeaway. That's the longest streak in the NFL. We got to slow down on Baltimore. They give you 27 points a week minimum, and they take the ball away from you. Lamar was 10 for 10 against the Colts in the second half. They're not perfect offensively when throwing the ball, but they're fine. They lost to the Steelers by a play on a turnover-plagued afternoon. I still think Baltimore is one of the 4 best teams, 3 best teams in the league.
Number 2.
Steelers. They drive me nuts, but they have the most sacks. Multiple touchdown passes for Big Ben. Everybody's close. They're too emotional for me. But I will say this. Just got a bunch of good players. They draft them well. They develop them. I've been critical of Mike Tomlin before. Sunday's why. That's why I stayed away from that bet. Everybody's like, you got to take the Steelers. No way am I taking the Steelers as a 2-touchdown favorite. But I will say this. There's only one great team in this league. Everybody else we can argue over. You're 8-0, I'll put you at 2.
Number 1.
I think they're their own category. Head coach A+, quarterback A+, weapons A+, defense A-, Kansas City. There's nothing not to like. They play well from behind. They play well with a lead. They had a little bit of a hiccup in a shootout to the Raiders. I really like what they're doing with Mahomes. The average NFL quarterback throws 35 times a game. He's now throwing 30. So they're building a running game. They're protecting it. There's just nothing I don't like about them. That is, it's funny. The last 20 years we had a dynasty that was efficient but kind of boring. They're the opposite. They can be efficient, but they're big play. I don't see a weakness. Once they start playing defense, injuries. That's it. Cheetah gets hurt. Patrick Mahomes gets hurt. Travis Kelce. There's a problem. Right now, best team in the league. And then there's 9 other good teams that probably on their best day couldn't beat them. There you go. Joy, any arguments?
I think I would move the Saints up on Green Bay just because
I thought about that.
I don't like Green Bay's run defense
Yeah,
at all.
no, I mean, that's totally fair. I didn't want to overreact to Sunday.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. But I like it.
By the way,
that's the only switch I would make.
Did the Packers beat the Saints? Yeah, they did, didn't they? I didn't even count for that.
But that's not what we're doing. That's not how the
that's right. That's
works.
That's not. I mean, listen, Buffalo. I put them one spot ahead of Seattle. It wasn't just the game. It's that Seattle is too dependent
on Russell Wilson.
Whereas I felt like Buffalo had other options beyond Josh Allen. So there you go. I feel.
I like seeing the Dolphins up there.
Today, Dolphins play Raiders. I take the Dolphins. We're getting in. We're November now. It's November. Defense matters.
Yes.
Keep your eye. This will become a big thing. Health. Like, for instance, Seattle is 7. Let's be honest about it. If Seattle's running backs are healthy, if Chris Carson is healthy,
that's a big if.
I know it's a big if. But if they are, I could put Seattle in the top 3 or 4 and feel great about. When Seattle goes into a game and they're all banged up at running back, which is sort of like every week, I don't like him as much because they become totally dependent on Russell Wilson.
I do agree with your point about Green Bay, though, because they don't match up well with physical teams.
But they're all out east. They're all in the AFC.
Yeah, they're all in the AFC now.
And it used to be San Francisco. Okay, they're not a factor. So all the teams that are roadblocks for Green Bay are either in the AFC or like
that are going to be in the playoffs. Yeah.
Right. But I don't think LA Rams is a bad matchup. I don't
Green Bay Seattle play right now. You're taking Green Bay.
It depends on if Seattle's running backs are healthy. Seattle. They're not. I take Green Bay. Can Seattle, when their running backs are healthy, they're a physical team. When they're not, they become a finesse team. It's like Russell run. They become Arizona. Seattle is Arizona when the running backs aren't healthy, and Arizona's not going to beat Green Bay in a shootout.
Right.
But when Seattle's running backs are healthy, they're a little more like Baltimore.
Well, I mean that's also the weakness of Green Bay.
Yeah.
So.
All right, a lot of things. Trevor Lawrence is going to be a Jet. Sam Darnold, they're moving off him. Thoughts about that? Albert Breer coming up next as well.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you like.
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You Know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
Thursday, division rivals square off as the Colts and Titans battle for first place in the AFC South. It all starts at 7:30 Eastern on Fox, NFL Network, and streaming on Prime Video.
That's a pretty interesting game, actually.
Big game.
Yeah. That division's always been weird. Just weird. Senior NFL reporter, Monday Morning Quarterback, we bring him on. Try to every week. He's got all sorts of insights. Albert Breer is now joining us live. You know, I said this to start our show today. When Brady left New England, I was shocked. Now, a lot of you guys that are on the inside weren't. The house was for sale, all that stuff. But I think a lot of us were like, Tom's a system guy. He loves it. It's very much about, the grind, and he's a grind guy. And I look at Bill Belichick, and as much as he's great, Pete Carroll was fired twice when he couldn't get a quarterback. Couldn't win in Seattle pre-Russell Wilson. Belichick's won 43% of his games. And I don't see a solution, Albert, at quarterback. They're not going to run back Cam. They're now out of the running for the top three quarterbacks, and probably Zach Wilson at BYU if you look at their draft spot today, and they're going to beat the Jets again. And I say to myself, Jacksonville would give him everything. They'd give Bill the GM, they'd give him the coach. Old guys like to go to Florida.
Yeah.
The Chargers, by the way. Chargers, Albert, cannot sell tickets in L.A. You got LeBron, Kawhi, the Rams, USC, and I think you can't win in this league if you don't have the right quarterback. Even Belichick can't. And I think to myself, what's the solution, Albert, this morning at quarterback for New England? I don't see it.
I don't know. Like right now, I think you have to give it a go with Cam over the next 7 weeks, see what happens. I think they very much are going to give him the chance to hold on to that job. We'll see what happens. Obviously, they've had to change their system quite a bit. But you're right. There's a lot of uncertainty past that. They obviously don't have him signed past this year. I think we would have seen more of Jarrett Stidham by now if they really had any sort of belief left in him. And so then you look out at the veteran market. Maybe somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo becomes available. Maybe they look at Jacoby Brissett, who's going to be a free agent out of Indianapolis, has background in their system as somebody who could be a bridge option for them. But other than that, I mean, you really are looking at the draft. And the one thing that is, I think, nice for some teams about the draft now, I think coming into the year, this was like a 2+1 draft class, right? Like, at that position, it was Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and maybe Trey Lance. Now I think you've got maybe as many as 6 quarterbacks that could go in the top 50 picks. Those 3 guys, Zach Wilson from BYU, like you mentioned, Kyle Trask from Florida, Mac Jones from Alabama, all could be first or second round picks. And so I think right now they've got to just sort of keep their options open. I know I was an advocate for signing Cam to maybe a 3 or a 4 year deal. I still don't think that that's off the table if he starts to play better. But you're right, the future's very uncertain at that position for them. And without the quarterback in the NFL, like you said, you're nowhere.
You know, it's interesting. I noticed this. I didn't think it was a coincidence. When LeBron arrived for the Lakers, suddenly the Clippers went out and got 2 stars. The Rams started signing big free agents. The Dodgers finally spent big money, bookie bets. It's like, okay, it's a competitive, distracted, deep sports market in L.A. LeBron moves in. You want to get in the LA Times? You want to get on talk radio? You got to go get stars. And so I look at New York, and how do you catch up if you're the Nets to the Knicks? Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. And I look at the Jets. They're dead in New York. How do you catch up to the Giants? Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. I think some of this, Albert, feels like a business move, and Joe Douglas, the GM's, not going to have much of a say. Like, is that crazy?
Well, it would be. I think it would be valid if Trevor Lawrence wasn't this otherworldly prospect. And I think I've said this to you before, and I think I think sometimes people get this part mixed up, right? Like, this isn't we talk about somebody this way every year kind of guy. This is John Elway, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence. This is a once in a decade type of prospect, and so I think there's that. There's that, of course, is a huge factor here. The other thing, Colin, is, are you sure about Sam Darnold? Because you're going to have to make a $25 to $30 million decision on him in May if you are going forward with him as the quarterback, and you'd be locking yourself into him for the next 2 years. And so I think from a football standpoint, it would make all the sense in the world. I think it'd almost be malpractice not to take Trevor Lawrence. But you are right. Like, it would help on the marquee having Trevor Lawrence to sell yourself in New York. And by the way, if they are going to be looking for a new coach, which seems like a distinct possibility right now, they're going to be competing with some franchises that aren't complete dumpster fires. Like, I don't view Atlanta as that bad a franchise. I don't view Houston as that bad a franchise. And so if they're in competition for some coaching candidates, what better lure would would there be out there than having a 21-year-old kid like Trevor Lawrence to build around?
So I watched Kyler against Tua. I said it was probably the most entertaining football game I've seen so far. You've got a lot of sources around the league. Kyler's officially a hit. It works. There's no arguing now.
Yep.
Kyler works in the NFL. Herbert, Burrow, it's working. Tua was the one where, like, I don't know. But I tell you what, if you look at the history of the NFL, Albert, quarterbacks that are good with defensive coaches win a lot of these Super Bowls. And I looked at Flores and Tua. I got to be honest with you. What are you hearing around the league? Because I watched that and I thought, boy, this is interesting.
It's really interesting you bring that up, Colin, because if you look at Russell Wilson in Seattle and you look at Tom Brady in New England, playing for defensive coaches, right? What's the thing they have in common? When they were young in their careers, those teams were built where those guys didn't have the weight of the world on their shoulders. They didn't have to throw for 1,000,000 yards because those teams were built a different way. What does it look like Tua has in Miami? Like, they don't need him to throw for 300 yards every week. In fact, his first start, the defense scored a touchdown, set up another one, and they scored a touchdown on special teams. And so I think some of the sensibilities of defensive coaches lead them to build teams that way, and that can actually help your young quarterback more than having a great receiver or a great tight end for them to throw to, just because mentally they go into the game knowing, I just got to do my job and we're going to be okay. So I think that that's a part of it. And as for Tua specifically, I was talking to a couple Dolphins staffers on Sunday night, and I think there were some interesting things that came from those conversations. Number one, they really liked how he adjusted on the fly. They lost a tight end, Durham Smythe, and a receiver, Preston Williams, in game. They really, really liked the way that he adjusted as things went on and was able to kind of roll with the punches there. And one of the guys that I talked to just kind of put it this way to me on how he performed down the stretch. Came down to 3 words. He's a winner. They already see that just half a season into his NFL career.
Yeah, well, that's what Saban said. He's a winner. Not ideal size, not a huge arm, not the cagiest runner. He's a winner. So, you look at, I saw a story the other day, it may have been by Ben Volen. He said, Brady, I thought the Tampa offensive game plan was weird. So, Tom generally likes to get his completions in. He likes to get into a little bit of a rhythm. Then he can go over the top. Tampa came in and just low percentage deep throws. And I was like, this is just not Tom. And listen, Arians called him out a little, and Ben Volen's article says, is there a power struggle? What do you make when you watch that performance? It's beyond losing. It feels like, are there disconnecting points here, Arian style, Tom style at all?
I think there were probably a couple things that worked. I actually was encouraged with what we had seen over the weeks previous to this one. So, I don't want to make sweeping conclusions based on what was a really, really bad Sunday night for them against the Saints. In fact, I think we saw some things that were encouraging just as far as Brady's willingness to go down the field. Obviously, Bruce Arians' offense has always been conducive to that sort of thing. So we saw that. I think one thing that's interesting about this one, though, is what happens when you're playing from behind, right? Like, Brady's always liked to sort of spread the ball around. He's liked to have control of things. He isn't the type of quarterback who's going to try and get everything back in one throw. And I think playing from behind can kind of stress coaches and quarterbacks in different ways. And so, I think now this kind of puts them at an interesting crossroads because now they've seen it. What happens when things go awry? They've got to decide who they are in those spots. And so I think that that's where you saw a little bit of that disconnect. Whereas when you're up by 3 touchdowns, it's easy to go down the field, right? Like, hey, let's try this and see if it works. If it doesn't, no big deal. It's a lot different when you're playing from behind. And so you would hope at least that now guys like Tom Brady, Clyde Christensen, Tom Moore, and Bruce Arians can go back and look at that and say, we really got to figure out who we want to be in those sorts of spots because it wasn't working on Sunday night.
Yeah. Okay, if we all acknowledge Kansas City's the best team in the league, A, quarterback, A, coach, I think their defense is playing at an A level, A, weapons. Who is your second best team in the NFL this morning?
I still think it's Pittsburgh. I put Pittsburgh number 1 in my power rankings because they're undefeated. But I still think it would probably be the Steelers just because they're more complete than they have been. And I do think there's a ceiling there. I think that there's they've got a ways to go before they're really hitting on full throttle. And one of the reasons why I still think there's another gear they can hit with those young receivers. And it looks like they've got 3 really good ones.
Yeah.
Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and and obviously the rookie Chase Claypool. And so, really good defense. It looks like they've got the defense fixed. The running game's working. And now I think there's even another level that they can reach with those three young receivers. They haven't gotten there yet, but I do think that there's the room to grow there where they can grow a little bit more. And I think when it comes to kind of ranking these teams and stacking them and competing for championships, it's about who has the least flaws. And I look at the Steelers roster, and I just don't see a whole lot of holes. Devin Bush might have created one at linebacker, but Vince Williams is a really good player in there for him, and they were able to trade for Avery Williamson. So I think they're the second most complete team and the second best team in the league behind the Chiefs.
Albert Breer, good talking to you as always. Monday morning quarterback. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin.
You know, we were talking about the Jets and Trevor Lawrence, and his point is, listen, when you get an Elway or an Andrew Luck, like you're Peyton Manning, like just at some point, if you're a general manager, I said this with LeBron, and I feel like this, and this happens maybe once a decade in the NBA, and once or twice a decade in the NFL. If you're a general manager, you draft a guy to protect your legacy. Like a lot of people like Carmelo Anthony. You draft LeBron, and if he doesn't go, you won't be stained forever. Like if you draft Carmelo and LeBron becomes great, even if Melo's great, nobody thought that Melo had the ceiling of LeBron. Like with Trevor Lawrence, and I like Sam Darnold, he'll end up with the Colts or the 49ers in Atlanta. He'll end up somewhere in a better spot, right? But you have to protect yourself sometimes. Don't outthink the room. I see Cliff Kingsbury, I love him, but he outthinks the room so often. It's 4th and 1. Give the ball to Kyler. Stop giving it to running backs. Give it to Kyler. Sometimes you just, in life, don't outthink the room. The obvious stuff, and most of life, you know, there's one or two things just do. Spend less than you make. Treat others like you'd like to be treated. Be very wary of pushing back too much on authority. You know, authority likes to fire people. So there's certain basic rules in society you kind of know. The rest we can argue about. If you get a Trevor Lawrence, you get a LeBron James, you get an Andrew Luck, just take it. Like it's over. Like just take it. You're protecting yourself. Because the owner in New York, he wants Trevor Lawrence. And so they're going to take him, regardless of what Joe Douglas wants. They're going to take Trevor Lawrence. And by the way, that would be one of the rare instances, as a GM or a coach, I'd be like, okay, yeah, you're probably doing me a favor taking it off the table. He's just too good. We've been talking about this kid for 3 years. Last year, one of ESPN's draft experts came out and said, he struggled against LSU. And I went on the air and mocked that person. He got mad at me. My take was, stop. That's a bad topic. Like, he's number one. He could literally rip his leg up tomorrow, and as long as he could rehab, he'd still be number one. Like, he's number one. It's LeBron. You get once a decade, a sport, not a team, a sport gets this. You take him. Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news.
This is the Herd Line News.
Staying with those Jets, not the prettiest game last night.
So bad.
But interesting. Interesting. Can't argue interesting. Joe Flacco
What was that?
had some moments.
What was that big throw late? You're like, what are you doing?
Well, I didn't say they were all good moments.
I like New England coming down the field with screens. They're running these little short screens that are all getting 15 yards.
Well, the Patriots won 30-27 despite the Jets having a 10-point lead midway through the fourth quarter. Fell apart for the Jets. Patriots got a field goal. As you mentioned, Joe Flacco threw an inexplicable deep pass that was intercepted, and then Cam Newton led the Patriots on a scoring drive to tie it. Jets quickly went very strange 3-and-out. And the Patriots went on to win it on a walk-off field goal. The Jets are currently 0-9 and hold the first pick in the 2021 draft. You know, watching the end of that game, I felt good for Cam Newton. I don't think it matters to the Patriots, really, because the Patriots are not a good team. But it felt good for Cam Newton, especially after the way that the Bills game ended. He's been struggling. But I also feel really bad for these Jets players. Like, they're 0-9. That's a game that, as players, we know the organization's tanking, right? Yeah. But players and coaches don't tank.
Right.
The only time the coach will be tanking. They're really not tanking, they're rebuilding.
Yeah.
And that's when they're in a very secure situation.
And they want a quarterback.
They want a quarterback.
Yeah.
The front office and the coach are on the same page. We're going to trade off these players.
You only do it in football for a quarterback. You don't do it for Khalil Mack. You wouldn't do it for Randy Moss. You do it for a quarterback.
No, but look at the Dolphins last year, right? It's like tank for Tua. They're clearly rebuilding.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a complete tank. They played hard. Brian Flores was building a culture. They clearly had, similar to what the Giants are doing this year, and they're not tanking, but they're in a rebuild. You want to get better every week. You want to show signs of life and fight. That's not what the Jets are doing. They're clearly tanking, but players don't tank. They don't.
Yeah.
They do not tank. Adam Gase is not tanking. He's probably not going to be there next season, and what he's putting on tape right now is not good for his future, and neither is it for Jets players. So I feel bad. I've been around a team that was almost 0-16 with the Dolphins, and that is a miserable existence. So I did feel bad for the Jets players, because that felt like a game they could win, despite it being obviously a really hideous football game.
Yeah.
And but the tank is still alive, so Jets fans are happy, and the front office is happy.
Loss. Yeah.
It's a good loss if you're a fan or the front office. So Bruce Arians showed early in the season he's not afraid to publicly criticize Tom Brady, and he seems to be at it again after a loss to the Saints.
With him being the best receiver on this team, why isn't Byron making a more concerted effort of getting Mike involved in the passing game earlier?
Mike was open a bunch in that ball game. He just didn't get targeted. That's all. He was open. Mike was open.
He had 6 targets.
I know, but I felt this too. I felt like they were trying too hard to get it to AB. This is the downside to superstars. I felt like this is the OBJ thing. It's not that Landry doesn't get targets and stuff, but I felt like, okay, Antonio Brown's been there 3 days. Mike Evans has been there 4 years. Mike Evans should get 12 targets a game minimum.
Yeah, Antonio Brown should be an absolute compliment to what they already have going on.
It didn't feel like that in the first 3 series.
I mean, this whole game was weird. It 5 rushes all game, and one was a kneel down.
It was just
absurd.
It goes back to what we said yesterday. Take me somewhere. What are you trying to do with your football? You can tell in the first 2 series of the game, this is what they saw on film. Tell me after the first 5 series of Tampa what they were trying to do. It's just a bunch of weird, low percentage throws. That's the opposite of Brady's skill set. Such a weird, it was a no game plan.
It was, on top of them getting blown out, which you obviously never want to do, it was just a really bad loss. They needed to win that game.
Well, they're a wild card team now. Yes. That's what they are. Period.
And so to not only lose that game and now be a wild card team, you lost in that fashion. So you've lost twice to the Saints now. They have ultimate confidence if you meet again. Yeah. It's just, it was just a really weird game plan. So as far as him criticizing Brady, sure, I guess you could say in a way he's criticizing Brady more he's criticizing Byron Leftwich, but it just felt like a forced situation all around. It was not a well-rounded game plan to begin with. Carson Wentz has made it clear before the Eagles' Week 9 bye that he is going to continue to play aggressively and that his team is prepared to live with his high-risk approach. He was asked about his mental approach when it comes to deciding whether or not to give up on the play or continue to make something out of nothing.
It's a fine line that I'll be walking, and probably never have solved fully my whole career. I think that's just the nature of who I am and the player I am and how we play and how we do things around here.
Well, they're 3-4-1 this season. He's 58.4 completion percentage, 1,833 yards, 12 passing touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Not his best season so far. They have had a ton of injuries, but he himself has also had a lot of injuries. And talking about his kind of reckless style of play, he had a concussion this year.
He is reckless. He and Darnold are reckless.
Fractured back, ACL, LCL tear, chest and rib fracture, hand and wrist fracture.
Deshaun Watson's not reckless. He just runs around and gets hurt. Darnold and Wentz sometimes forget their quarterbacks. They're like, I'm a linebacker. It's like, no. You don't have,
Kyler
Murray.
You're the same size.
I know.
As the other guy that's about to tackle you does not mean that you are the one who should be taking that hit.
It's almost like, everybody likes a tough guy. But if you're married to a tough guy, at 42 years old, you're over bar fights. It's great to have a man and an alpha, but like Carson Wentz and Darnold, run over people. That's your $4 billion franchises.
I mean, there's a time and place for everything, right?
Right.
There's a time when you're on the goal line and
Yes.
it's a huge play in a huge game.
Cam
a huge
last
moment,
night. Get in there.
And you just
boom
bulldoze someone.
But
a random play in the second quarter of a regular season game, just get down.
2 weeks ago, Darnold against the Chiefs runs right down the middle of the field and gets smoked. Sam, it's a boy. Roll, slide. What are you doing? So it's whatever it is. Don't get it. Wentz does this. It's like, you guys, these are $4 billion franchises. They can't win without you. Learn to slide.
Some things I think you just can't get away from. To his point, that's just his nature.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a sustainable style of play.
Neither do I. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
You know,
The Herd Live
and some of this
News.
is Carson Wentz grew up in hunting territory. He's a man's man. He was in New Jersey. He was literally hunting by the interstate. Somebody found him duck hunting. Sam Darnold was a linebacker in high school. It is their nature. They're not these they're not these finesse quarterbacks. And Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson played baseball, which is sliding. Nobody's getting tackled. So Wentz and Darnold, they're just physical dudes. They to get
it's
smoked.
Great if I need you to go, tackle that venison and
right. But you know who doesn't like to get tackled?
For the winner?
Mahomes played baseball. Kyler played baseball. Russell Wilson played baseball. Baseball players don't like getting tackled. They get mad if you knock them out at second base too hard. So it's like the baseball quarterback thing.
Yeah.
The mindset is, I've been sliding my whole life to avoid getting hit. You get some of these guys like Andrew Luck. I remember one time he said, I love getting the first big hit. I'm like, nope, not the right answer.
But that's great. You don't want a soft quarterback.
No.
You want somebody who can take a hit and get back up. But that's not the position. If you're getting hit, that's actually a bad thing.
Take a hit and seek a hit are two different things.
Yes.
Sam Darnold, sometimes I'm like, Sam, this is not Oceanside High School. You're not playing linebacker. Get down. But I think also when you're a 6'4" guy and you weigh 230 pounds and you walk around America and you're much bigger than the average guy and you're lifting weights all day and you're alpha, you just kind of forget in the moment, oh, they're all bigger than me.
Well, sometimes they're not bigger, but just the defense is meant to hit you.
Right.
It's not the position that you play.
By the way, why the NFL is in incredible shape going forward, and I was reminded of that and what they've really done that the NBA used to do well, but I don't think does as well as they used to. And the NFL's taken over this category, and that's coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
CarShield.com, code is HERD, get 10% off when your warranty runs out. Don't let it freak you out when the check engine light comes on. CarShield.com, code HERD, a deductible may apply. So, when I was a kid, the NFL was always about the shield. It was like the NBA had stars. The first star I saw was Wilt Chamberlain. My first game I ever watched, I was on a bunk bed as a kid in small Grayland, Washington, and I saw a Blazer-Laker game. Brent Musburger was doing it. I'm not joking. Not to show his age, but, I'm old too. So, Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West played. And then I fell in love with Dr. J. And then it was Bird and Magic. Then it was Jordan. Then it was Shaq and Kobe. And there was the Reggie Millers and guys who aren't quite that good but are fascinating. The Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen. So the NBA has always lured me in. Not necessarily for urgency. I mean, there's 82 regular season games. I can not watch most games and be okay. But it lured me in because of stars and style. Dr. J didn't play anything like Michael. Bill Walton didn't play anything like Kareem. Wilt didn't play anything like Akeem. Shaq was his own persona and style. So the NBA has always sucked me in because you have all these kind of unique artists and these styles and these stars. Again, I don't watch it because of urgency. I would watch the NFL as a kid more and as I've grown up because the games matter more. There's few of them, right? But I think the NFL, and they may have just kind of lucked into this. I'm not saying they get a ton of credit for it. But it's really turned. And I was thinking this morning, I wrote a list down. Is that, and almost all these guys have a different style. It's very NBA. There are 11 current quarterbacks in the NFL. They're not all the best. That if they're on, I turn the channel, and they're quarterbacking. They have the ball, I stop. 3 of them are old guys. Big Ben, Breeze, and Brady. I turn the channel, they have the ball, I stop. Couple of them are middle-aged. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Totally different games. And then the young guys. Mahomes, Kyler, Lamar, Tua, Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert. They have the ball. I'm not moving the channel. Sunday, I got Tua against Kyler. I mean, that to me was like, watching Goodfellas. It was like 3.5 hours of joy. 11, and I like Deshaun Watson, but he doesn't do that for me. Derek Carr I like. He doesn't do it for me. There are 11 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. If they have the ball and I'm turning the channel, I stop. That's powerful. That's what Wilt did to me. That's what Dr. J, Michael, Magic, Kobe, Shaq. James Harden does not do that for me. And it's funny. LeBron still does. Iverson did. Barkley did. But it's funny, the NFL has become the NBA. They've stolen away. I can't think of 11 guys in the NBA I stopped the TV for. Now, some of it's urgency, right? The games don't matter as much. But Kawhi Leonard, is he playing tonight? Harden's game drives me nuts. So does Westbrook's. I mean, the NBA put Giannis. This is what the league did. They put Giannis' playoff game at noon. They're telling you that people aren't interested. In fact, I found one of the most wildly entertaining teams, Miami. Miami was fun. I don't even know who the guys are. It was like Jimmy Butler and a bunch of no-names. Guys were in college an hour ago. It was fun. It's just what the NFL, and what I think the NFL is doing, and I thought about this over the weekend, is what I did as a kid. It wasn't just that the NBA had stars, but they were different. Wilt was a flake. He is flaky. And Dr. J was acrobatic. And he didn't play like anybody. And Kobe and Michael looked a little alike, but Magic didn't play anything like Barkley. And Barkley didn't play anything like Bird. And they were just all unique flavors and styles. And Russell Wilson doesn't play anything like Aaron. Breeze doesn't play anything like Lamar. There's 11 different NFL quarterbacks. I stop the television. That is power. That's why those guys are going to get shoe deals and big deals. If you can get me to stop, because I bounce around. All I do Sunday is just bounce around game to game to game to game to game. You know, it's fascinating. And it's like Cam, I would put ahead of Deshaun Watson for me. Because is it the fall of Cam? Is it the end of Cam? That's kind of fascinating. I almost put Cam on the list, and I just thought, no, he didn't quite have it. I mean, last night was a very easy game to shut off for me if I wanted to. But it is, and I'm not saying the NFL gets a lot of credit for this. It may just be quarterbacks are, I said this earlier, NBA guys, high school, 1 year of college pros, they come into the sport not ready to play, unless you're like LeBron. The high school quarterback play, because all the 7-on-7 camps is so good that the college quarterbacks go in the NFL. They're not only ready to play, they're ready to win. So maybe it's cultural, and the NBA doesn't deserve to get criticized for it. It's just a culture change, and the NFL doesn't deserve credit. But I tell you what, the NFL to me today feels like the Star League, and it never did my entire life. mdriveformen.com. Stay lean, eat right, supplement, take it every morning. One scoop every day as well. mdrivestart.com. Good shake at the herd.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. This season, we'll have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes. Guests include the amazing singer and actor Anthony Ramos, TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio, NBA star Aaron Gordon, and many more. Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts. I'm Mandy V, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
And I'm Wheezy, former tech exec turned podcaster and comedy writer. We're the hosts of the Horrible Decisions podcast. Through laughter and education, we work to destigmatize kinks, normalize conversations that are taboo, like sex, dating, relationships. Check us out every Monday.
That's right. Don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio iHeartRadio app, the #1 app for podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Get cozy with Tommy John Loungewear Pajamas. Best pair you'll ever wear. It's free guaranteed. Right now, $25 off site-wide. They don't do that much. Go to TommyJohn.com, code HERD. It's a great site. $25 off site-wide. Their loungewear is amazing. I wear their t-shirts every day. And I don't even like t-shirts. I really don't. I'd just be naked out here if I could. I just free. Well, I mean, not totally, but I'm like a free guy. I don't like being encumbered by,
I thought you said you wear your button up at home.
Well, I'm a professional when I get home.
Oh, that's only when Ann is home.
That's right. I'm a businessman.
When Ann's out of town, you're just leaving cupboard doors open.
Oh, it's incredible.
Not using coasters.
Dogs on the kitchen table. It's a mess. TJ Houshmandzadeh is going through a home building issue. He's been building a home for 2 years. His new place is done, and we just spent 10 minutes talking about, folks, just buy a new home. It's not worth it. TJ's joining me. 11 years in the NFL, Pro Bowler. God, I feel your pain. I've told so many buddies in my life I want to rebuild my home, and I always say, is your marriage good? If your marriage is good, go for it. If you're on the rocks, just buy a new home. It's too much construction. So he's got a good marriage. He's got a smile on his face going through a brutal 2 years. I want to start with this. You've been on good teams. Sometimes, Jimmy Johnson said this, sometimes you show up and you just get your arse kicked. And I look at Tampa and I'm like, nothing about that was good. If you were a Buccaneer the next morning, can you just get over it? Is that easier to get over than a close loss?
I'm not. When you lose the way they lost, I don't think it's easy at all, considering the way opening weekend went for them against that same Saints team. And so it was like, oh, they won't play this bad again. There's no way the Saints can beat them this way again. And they beat them worse than they did the first game. And so for me, it would be tough to get over this. But obviously we have to. It wasn't a competitive game. They had no answer for the Saints. They couldn't do anything. And for me, until they start to beat really good teams, it's going to always have that thought in the back of their mind, like, are we really as good as we think we are? Because if they get behind against another good team by double digits, that Saints game is going to be in the back of their mind. And a guy like Brady, maybe not because he has so much success, but the majority of that Bucs roster has been on that team. They're going to revert back to, oh, man, here we go again type of feeling.
You know, it's interesting. Joy and I on Antonio Brown are like, we'll just play. We're not going to make any predictions on this. I did feel like that they were forcing it to him. And I felt like Mike Evans got, and who I think is the better player right now, the bigger, easier target, big catching radius, and throw much to him. And this is what worries me. Receivers want looks. It's a real thing. Like, right, you guys are the NBA players of the NFL. You break the huddle first. You're the most athletic guy. Like, you can ignore an offensive guard. They always get ignored. But when Mike Evans doesn't get looks, I'm like, that ain't good. That ain't good. And this is what worries me. So go back to your career. You had the kind of personality with Ocho that you understood it, but you still wanted your looks too. And there were games that you felt forgotten. And I felt like, why are they forcing it to AB? It's week 1. Like, did you sense that at all?
I don't think they were forcing it to AB. They didn't have a lot of snaps in the first half. They were 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. So they didn't get to run a lot of plays. Now, with that being said, you don't want to have Mike Evans doubt where he stands. That's the biggest thing. Is okay, yeah, I was okay with AB coming on the team, but I still need my looks. And so I believe what needs to happen moving forward is when you go over the first 15 plays of the game, we all know as receivers, we look at the script and we say, okay, they're trying to get me the ball on play 3. Oh, they're trying to get me the ball on play 7. As long as you have plays that you feel are designed for you, whether you get it or not, you feel okay about that. But they need to get first downs in order for that to come to fruition. And they were so bad and anemic on offense, they had no chance. But yes, they need to make Mike Evans feel like we are trying to get you the ball, whether it happens or not. Make him feel that way.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You know this a lot because you've been at these high school football camps. You kept telling us over and over, you're like, Colin, Justin Herbert's going to be unbelievable. You kept telling us, you're like, this kid is unbelievable. I watched Tua, and I'm like, that kid hadn't played in a year and a half. When you watch all these young guys come in, and they are good now, are you shocked, or have you been seeing this for 5 or 6 years at these camps? They're just smarter kids.
I'm not shocked at all, and we've talked about this before, is these kids are seeing different coverages in high school in these 7-on-7 camps. They're getting so many throws, so many different looks. Yeah, the speed of the game is different, but the looks are somewhat similar, albeit they're not disguising as much. So they have an idea of where to go with the ball when they see certain coverage. They see a single high safety. We're going to work this side of the field. We see a 2 high safety. We're going to work this side of the field. And so that's what it is. These guys are getting so many throws before they get to college and seeing so many different looks that when they get to the league, they're ready to go. It's just more the mental capacity and slowing yourself and calming yourself down. And once you do that, you see what these guys are doing now.
And, you know, we talked about this. Joy and I talked about this. Quarterback play, they're better. They're better earlier. I actually think the offensive coaching in the NFL is better than 10 years ago. And I watched Cam last night, and I'm like, he's not as dynamic a runner. He's, you know, it's a efficiency league as a thrower. Is there a market for Cam Newton anymore in this league?
It's hard to look at what he's doing with New England and say Cam is this or Cam is that. I thought he was very efficient last night. He didn't throw a touchdown, but if you look at New England's receivers, and this is no disrespect to any of their receivers, their starters would be a backup on probably every single team that's not New England.
Yeah.
And that's not being disrespectful. You look at Julian Edelman, he had his best game of his career with Cam Newton as his quarterback, not Tom Brady. Jacoby Myers last night, best game of his career with Cam Newton as a quarterback. Cam needs a really, really good supporting cast. Cam needs a receiver that when they play man-to-man, I know I can go to him and he's going to get open. Julio Jones, Devontae Adams type of guys. He needs one of those guys. He needs a defense that's going to keep him in the game. Nobody is the same player when you're 8-10 years into your career that you were when you first started. But there's still a place for him because he showed last night without weapons that other teams have, I can still get the job done.
Listen, Dallas, we were saying, the Cowboys are now, they remind me a little of the Lakers. Huge brand. You have a singular family that owns them. And to change their trajectory, the Lakers made a seismic move. They fired Magic, they went and got LeBron, and they just said, we got to start this thing over. And Dallas keeps saying we want Dak. And my takeaway is, listen, man, Russell Wilson, since he got to a Super Bowl against New England, he hasn't won back-to-back road games. You got to rebuild the offensive line. Their best players aren't performing. Dak's coming off, a major injury. Like, how do players look at Dallas? Like, when you look at New England, they're cold. They're cold-hearted. When I look at Dallas, it's like they're family. They're kind of into their feels. Like, how do players look at the Cowboys? Do you look at them as well-run, not well-run?
I look at the Cowboys as a well-run organization, a team that I would venture to say 90% of the league would mind playing for. There's a handful of teams out there that you would want to play for organizations. The Cowboys are one of them. The Steelers are another. Those are just teams that you would assume are always going to be successful. The Cowboys, they have hit a rough patch, and expectations of the Cowboys have probably been higher than they should have been last year. They were supposed to be this good team. and they just weren't as good as people thought they were going to be. But because you look at, and everybody keeps talking about their O-line, this and that, their O-line hasn't been good. They're always injured. They're not able to run the ball. And Dak has done well considering what he has worked with very good receivers. But up front, they haven't been that dominant offensive line in a few years now. They're going to have to rebuild that. If they do give Dak that extension, they're going to have to make a decision on Zeke. I don't believe you can keep both of them at the price they're at, or at the price that Dak wants to come in at, and what Zeke is at, and be successful. So I believe a decision will be made if they sign Dak to an extension. I don't believe Ezekiel Elliott will continue to be on the team.
Well, or the thing we threw out there is move Cooper, because C.D. Lamb's good, Michael Gallup's pretty good. Go draft another receiver. I like Amari Cooper, but I can't pay Zeke, Dak, and Amari Cooper. I can't have those three. I just can't do it in the NFL.
Coop or Ezekiel Elliott, one of those two guys, and you're right, one of those two guys, if you can move them, but do you see anybody wanting to take Amari Cooper's contract on? I don't know if teams will be willing to take. He's a hell of a player. He's going to get open in one-on-one. He's a guy that every team would like to have on their team.
Yeah.
But at that price, do they want him?
Bill Belichick can't draft a receiver to save his life. Amari
Bill,
Cooper.
come holler at me. I got you. Bill, you holler at me. I got you. Come talk to me before the draft, Bill. I got you.
Good seeing you, buddy. Good luck with your house.
Colin, I appreciate it. Enjoy. You take care. You guys keep the great work up.
All right, thanks. He's been 2 years now. He's been living somewhere else. Oh, I've had buddies go through that.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of dust. Thank God he's got a rock-solid marriage. It is brutal.
Extremely active. Brothers and sisters, you already know what it is. The Gangster Chronicles. The land. From Oregon all the way down to Mexico. To all my SA brothers and sisters, viva la raza. The Gangster Chronicles is a weekly podcast hosted by former gangbanger and inmate James McDonald, rapper MC8, and myself, Norm Steele. Weekly we get together and have conversations with everyone from former gangsters, drug dealers, and bank robbers to police rappers and politicians. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is a glimpse into a world where society is rarely allowed access. Nothing is ever scripted and is 100% real. We don't glorify the gang, we simply educate and inform the world on what goes on in the streets of urban America. The Gangster Chronicles podcast is available on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Gangster Chronicles is brought to you by the Black Podcast Network.
Hey, yo, what's good, y'all? 2020 has been a long year so far, but some good things have happened.
Like Deadass coming back for a 4th season, but this time at a new home with iHeartRadio.
That's right, KK and I are back to give you a little bit of love, laughter, and levity during these hard times.
And for those of you who are new, I'm Kadeen Ellis, TV host, entrepreneur, mom, wife, and the official host of Deadass Podcast.
And I am DeVal Ellis, actor, retired NFL athlete, father, husband, and the voice of reason on Deadass Podcast.
Oh, shut up, DeVal. Ladies, I'm here to represent for us all. While this crazy husband of mine and I discuss the taboo topics people don't like to talk about in marriage, you don't want to miss it.
Join us in conversation with guests like Sean King, Shan Boudram, Melanie Fiona, Joe Biden, and more.
Listen to Deadass on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Deadass.
Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, lots of NBA news is about to start creeping in again. Feels like the season just ended, but the NBA draft is next Wednesday.
I just saw this. LaMelo Ball's going number 1.
Well, there is some growing consensus that he will be the number 1 overall pick, according to ESPN's Jonathan Givenoy. The majority of NBA front offices believe LaMelo Ball will be selected first overall in the draft. There's still some question as to whether the Timberwolves will make the pick or whether another team will trade up to get LaMelo. The Bulls, Pistons, and Thunder have been named by NBA executives as teams that would be possibly interested in trading up to take him. According to Fox Bet, LaMelo has the second best odds to go number 1. Anthony Edwards has the best odds. He's from Georgia. Then James Wiseman at plus 700. From Memphis, Denny Advia at plus 3,000, and Obi Toppin from Dayton at plus 5,000.
Anthony Edwards is an interesting player. I could see him going to the Warriors. The Georgia kid.
I think LaMelo's obviously Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball are the two biggest names in this draft. This draft's kind of interesting because obviously we didn't have the same kind of buzz about the draft as we usually do.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of weird. Like the Warriors have a high pick, as you mentioned, and it's just a different year. But I really think if LaMelo goes to the right place, he's going to. He already has a star factor to him. I think if he goes to the right place, he can develop, and he has some players around him that can, some veteran players that can elevate him. He's going to be very good wherever he lands.
But you don't. Last year's draft had 2 guarantee hits. John Morant, Zion.
Yeah.
Nobody disputed they can play. There's a little more prospect here to this draft.
Yes.
A little more downside. LaMelo's. I've seen a ton of his highlights on YouTube. He's fun. He's a fun player.
He has a similar kind of experience as Luka did. Obviously, he didn't play in college, but he's been playing for the past 2 years against professional players internationally.
Much better shooter than Lonzo. He's got a nicer shot.
Yes. So NBA free agency begins at 6 p.m. Eastern on Friday, November 20th. That's next week, 2 days after the NBA draft, and the regular season is December 22nd with a 72-game season. So NBA season's right around the corner.
Yep.
It's approaching. Cam Newton has looked like a much improved player over the last 2 weeks, and after the win last night, he talked about what has changed.
I'm getting tired of sucking as a competitor. You know what your standard is, and taking pride in your work. That's what it comes down to. You not being able to hold your head up because you're thinking too much. That's one thing, but at the same time, you're solely responsible for the performance that you put up. I just did my job today, and that's what it's supposed to be each and every week.
Told you I felt good for Cam last night. Obviously, that was not the most beautiful game of football that we've ever seen played, and the stakes were much higher for the Jets than were for the Patriots to lose that game. Even though players don't tank. Like people argued with me last night. Players don't tank.
Yeah.
They don't.
The Jets players they wanted to win. They thought they had it. Yeah.
Yes. And it's incredibly disappointing and frustrating to be on a team that's losing every single week, and when you have an opportunity to win, you still lose. But for Cam, he was 27 of 35, 274 passing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He's run for 66 touchdowns in his career, which ties him for 40th in NFL history. Number 1 amongst quarterbacks. Second is Steve Young with 43 and Aaron Rodgers with 28 at third. He's had 8 rushing touchdowns in 7 games this season. So he is improving. It was a bit of an issue there. And then the next 3 games, they have the Ravens at the Texans and the Cardinals. It's come down to Buffalo and Miami, obviously, in this division.
Yeah.
But this is really what's happening with the Patriots this year is not that surprising. I didn't think the Patriots were I thought they were going to be the worst team in the division because I didn't think the Jets were going to be this bad.
We both did. Yeah, I mean, I picked them for last in their division, and the Jets, as usual, surprised me with their ineptitude.
I mean, I'm more rooting for Cam this season. Not that I'm rooting against the Patriots, it's just that we knew what the Patriots were going to be this season. I'd still like to see Cam play well enough to get an opportunity next year. So the Cowboys are 2-7, putting them at the top of the draft order for 2021. Stephen Jones was asked about the potential of drafting a quarterback with their first pick.
Dak's our quarterback, and we're so fired up about him and him leading us in the future, and we're focused week to week.
Neither Dak Prescott or Andy Dalton are under contract for next season, so the Cowboys will have to decide whether to tag Dak Prescott again in 2021 at a cost of $37.68 million.
Wow.
Or let him hit free agency.
Wow.
So it's kind of become a question of if they can actually afford Dak Prescott with the salary cap going down.
Like, it's not glib here. They cannot afford Dak, Zeke, and Amari. Why didn't they trade Amari at the trade deadline with all those good young receivers? Like Cedric Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. You could go into a season, draft one more at some point. Like, you can't have 3 guys that make that much money. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver. That is, you gotta save money somewhere.
Well, I mean, you could sign Dak Prescott to a long-term contract.
Then I still have to make up some of that salary because Zeke's not the player he was. So I'm paying a massive number for a good running back. They got to scale back. They got too many guys making way too much money.
Well, they would currently have the 3rd pick in the draft.
I'd trade down and get 2 picks.
Jets, Jags, Cowboys, Giants. Obviously, that could change.
If you were going to go with Dak, here's what I would do, Dallas. I'd find somebody and say, give me 2 twos, you can have my 1, because I don't have to pay 2s. And by the way, a second round player is a starter in the NFL immediately.
And then you sign Dak to
Yeah, I mean,
long-term, or
to
you
me,
franchise him again.
they don't need first-round picks. They need players.
Yeah.
They're becoming what the Rams got last year. Like 7 guys make a fortune. You have no depth anywhere.
The Rams went to the Super Bowl, and then the Rams were like still a decent team, and now they're still a competitive team.
Tyron Smith, left tackle, making a fortune. Never available. The guy's just got 4 major contracts potentially on offense. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Jim Gray is here chatting about his new book, Talking to Goats. Michael Jordan, Ali, Tom Brady, that's next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
On September 17th, 2009, 24-year-old Mitrice Richardson disappeared without a trace in the woods near Malibu, California. She had been arrested at a beachside restaurant for failing to pay a tab and taken to the Lost Hills Sheriff Station.
She's not from that area, and I would hate to wake up to a morning report. Lost somewhere with her head chopped off.
The police released her just after midnight, with no car, no cell phone, no money.
She doesn't know the area. She's never been in your area. Well, I think she's suppressed. That's what has me terrified.
That's worried you more than just her. Okay.
Mitrice disappeared into the darkness and was never seen alive again. I'm Catherine Townsend, host of the podcast Hell and Gone. We're going to try to find out what really happened to Mitrice Richardson. School of Humans and iHeartRadio present Hell and Gone Season 3. Listen to Hell and Gone on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
News with a new perspective. I'm Morgan Wood in Washington, D.C. News with a black perspective.
I'm Mike Stevens in Tampa.
The Black Information Network is the first all-news audio and digital network for and by the black community. Dedicated to 24/7 news and information.
I'm Julius White in Atlanta.
Get the podcast and get the biggest news and business stories delivered to you every morning. I'm Vanessa Tyler in New York. Subscribe to the Black Information Network daily. And wake up with the latest from the Black Information Network. Loaded and ready to go when you are. With reporters across America bringing you the latest news, traffic, weather, and sports.
I'm Doug Davis from Las Vegas.
Delivering breaking news that puts us first. Because our insight matters. Our stories matter. And the truth matters. The Black Information Network Daily is designed to inform, engage, and empower the black community. Now is our time. Listen to the Black Information Network Daily on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
He's a multiple Emmy-winning sports reporter. His name is Jim Gray, and you've seen him at the biggest boxing matches, at the biggest sporting events for many of our lives. He's got a new book. I can't read to read it. It's called Talking to Goats. The stories, it's not about zoo animals. It's about the greatest athletes of all time. Jim's first interview, he was 18 years old, was Muhammad Ali, who was the biggest star in the world. He is now joining us live, and we appreciate that. All right, how'd you get Muhammad Ali at 18 years old? What's the secret sauce to that, Jimbo?
Hey, Colin, thanks for having me. Well, I was a sports intern for the ABC station in Denver, KBTV, and my internship expired, and they were converting from film to videotape, so all the union guys took the buyout, and so a bunch of people who didn't really have any idea what they were doing became videotape editors. I was in my edit room one morning very early getting ready for the draft. Red Miller show, he was the Broncos coach. A lady named Sue Tews, the assignment editor, came running in. She said, Muhammad Ali's 2.5 hours early at the airport. Run out and get him. Well, Ali was getting ready to fight Spinks, and then he was going to fight a Denver Bronco named Lyle Alzado. Well, I'd never done an interview before, so I went into the weatherman's office, tried to find a coat and tie, couldn't find anything, went out to Stapleton International Airport, did the interview with Ali. After the first question, he said, "You're the one that's doing this interview?" And everybody started to laugh. Well, Colin, that just made me feel so much more comfortable, because I had gone from nervous about interviewing the most visible and famous person on the planet to now they were laughing. But they weren't laughing at me. They were laughing to make me comfortable, the whole entourage. And so after the third or fourth question, he said, "You sound like the local Howard Cosell." Colin, that was the greatest compliment I had ever had in my life, and it gave me so much confidence. I took the interview back to the station. The news director was a man named Roger Ogden for ABC there. He looked at the tape, and he was with me for about 45 minutes, and he looked at it again, and he said, we're going to put you in this tape on the air. It's barely adequate. So I tell everybody I've been barely adequate ever since.
The only athlete that rivals him in terms of flair and greatness, Muhammad Ali, is Michael Jordan. They're both like great looking, stylish, thoughtful, smart. What was it like to interview Jordan?
He was always impeccable. I mean, I never once saw Michael have a bad public moment. He always was great. He'd pat every youngster on the head. When he'd walk out of the building, back when there was proximity, he'd sign autographs. He was nice to the security people. So interviewing him, Michael was just, easy. He was easy to talk to. He was easy to be around. I know his teammates in The Last Dance have a different portrayal, but in terms of how he was with me and with the media, he was great, and he was just terrific in all those years that we had him on NBC, and in the pregame meetings where he would come in and Marv or Ahmad would interview him. He was just a perfect gentleman, and then a few times that I got to be with him outside of the court. In Barcelona, we played golf on a few occasions, and he was just great. There was nothing intimidating off the court about Michael Jordan.
What about, here's somebody that's interesting. Mike Tyson, you interviewed him after the bizarre ear-biting Evander experience. Now that had to be odd, right?
That was quite odd, and that was one that I knew when it was going to happen after he bit the ear that nothing like this would ever happen again. And he left the ring and didn't talk in the ring, and we went back underneath. I was working with Showtime, where I still do the boxing, and David Dinkins, who is the producer, was in my ear, and he said, see if you can get Don to get him to come out. So Don King brought him out. And Colin, it's the only time that I have ever seen actually somebody who is alive and I could see their skull. That's how deep over his eye the headbutt was and the wound that had opened. You could see the orbital bone in his skull, and that's why he felt he had to bite Evander Holyfield. That was the reasoning he had, that he had to retaliate. So we did the interview, and I took it in chronological order and asked him what had gone on, and finally, well, was that the proper response to bite his ear? And he answered the question. And I've always had tremendous respect and admiration for Mike Tyson, because at his worst moments, and he's had some bad, despicable moments, at his worst moments, Colin, he always had the wherewithal to stand there and answer the questions. He didn't hide behind some PR person.
Yeah.
He didn't come out with a statement 4 days later. He stood there and he took his medicine and he gave you a response. And that's very, very rare.
Were you surprised the pushback, I certainly was, the LeBron decision interview created? I still can't figure out why the nation imploded. I thought LeBron looked nervous and thoughtful. Were you shocked by kind of the national response and the anger at LeBron?
Yes, I was. And like Rich Paul has said to me and Maverick Carter, none of us had a crystal ball. None of us could foresee what went on there. And could we have been more sensitive to the fans in Cleveland? Absolutely. And could we have explained better that we were giving away millions upon millions of dollars, the biggest donation ever in the history of the Boys and Girls Club? Wow. Yes, we could have. Wow. So yes, we could have done better, but to make LeBron into a villain, it was wrong then, and it should have never occurred. And if you look at that show now and what the decision has become, that was the moment. It was the Curt Flood moment for this generation of player empowerment and of the birth, really, of communicating through social media and the rise of the Players Tribune and just how things go now. The reverberations of that show and the passage of time, the NBA players and all of sports, every player in sports owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to LeBron James.
Talking to GOATs. Now, we know you've done Tiger and we know you've done Brady, and I'm going to save those for people to buy the book because I want an autographed copy as well. But I got to ask you this. I remember interviewing Charles Barkley when I was a local reporter, and I knew he was going to be a star. He was so funny. He made fun of my shoes. He made fun of me. You just knew. You're like, that guy's going to be hysterical on TV. Is there anybody that's not a star that you interviewed and you just loved? You just went home and that maybe we wouldn't talk about, or maybe a lower star, or somebody perhaps you haven't interviewed you want to?
Well, Charles was great, and I say in the book that Charles was the most entertaining, most fun guy to be around. And we used to go up and down the Ramblas at night in Barcelona at the Olympics, and then hung out with him a tremendous amount. And Mike Tyson threatened to kill me on the air, and 45 seconds later, he kissed me on the cheek, and I'm still trying to figure out what's more disturbing. Charles Barkley kissed me on my cheek twice on national television, and for no apparent reason. At least Mike was trying to make up for threatening to kill me.
Yeah.
Charles did it, and I still don't know why he did it. But to answer your question, I mean, there's a lot of guys who I've walked away, and I thought, that's what a pleasant, really great guy. And, they're superstars, too. I mean, Brady is as nice a guy and as cordial as anybody you'd ever want to meet. Wayne Gretzky, Julius Erving, Joe Namath. I don't know anybody who's more comfortable, who's been a bigger superstar, who forced a merger of a league and brought the AFL to the Super Bowl that we now see than Joe Namath. So, and a guy who was really understated, but who had just an incredible heart and really didn't seek the limelight or anything. I love spending time around Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He was really special, Colin.
Oh, yeah. My first job, I don't want to waste time here, my first job out of college was covering boxing. So instead of going to your usual first job in Midland, Texas, I got to cover Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, and I've always thought of it as the great career break. Now, I made about $8 an hour, and I lived on peanut brittle. But both of us started basically for free. The book is called Talking to Goats. Buy it. I want a copy. This is just great. Jim, absolute pleasure. The Emmy-winning sports reporter, Sportscaster of the Year in America in 1997. Great seeing you, and thanks for stopping by our show.
Colin, thanks for having me. Love your show. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Thanks again.
You bet. Yeah, I felt like his first interview was Muhammad Ali. And for a lot of you listening to me that may be 20 or 30, Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali, Muhammad's the only athlete of my life that I think's bigger than Jordan. Remember, we didn't have cable television.
That's for sure.
Muhammad Ali was the most known human being.
I think he's the most famous athlete of all time.
If you took Muhammad Ali today with his ability to talk, and by the way, he poked back at the media, he took political stands, he would be like LeBron but funnier. He was funny. He was generally funny. He was like a comedian. His timing.
I mean, you have to think, when we have social media now, the access that you have to athletes is completely different then. Like, as famous as he was in a time where everybody didn't have a TV and
there was just
nothing like it.
Newspapers, ABC, NBC, CBS. That's it.
Yeah.
Fox didn't. We didn't have a network.
No, I think he's the most famous athlete of all time.
I think Jordan's second.
Yeah.
RecTech Grills, RecTech with a Q.com. Built by grillers for grillers. Check them out. RecTech Grills. Also, M-Drive. They got a new shakeout. 1 scoop every morning. Complex blend of protein and vitamins. It's called mdrivestart.com. We'll see you tomorrow. It's The Herd.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. This season, we'll have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes. Guests include the amazing singer and actor Anthony Ramos, TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio, NBA star Aaron Gordon, and many more. Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
News with a new perspective.
News with a black perspective.
The Black Information Network is the first all-news audio and digital network
For and by the black community.
Get the podcast and get the biggest news and business stories delivered to you every morning.
Subscribe to the Black Information